Welcome to Mo Banshee's Lair. This show has been altered to conform with YouTube's rules on copyright. The music has been removed in some of the commercials. I hope you enjoy it, and God bless you and yours.
Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
Well, I'm over the moon that I have a actor, a musician, composer on, Randy Bowser. Welcome to my lair.
Well, thank you very much, Mo. It's great to be here. It's a little bit spooky in here. Is it always this dark?
Yes, and the bears are just about ready to move out.
Okay.
The cougars have a few more weeks, but it is a cave, and it is a lair, so it's you got to take your neighbors as they come in.
Well, if anything approaches me that I'm not comfortable with, I'm sure you can control all the things around here, right?
Yes, everything but me. You have your big project right now is a one-man show about Boris Karloff. Please tell us about it.
Well, thanks for asking. Boris Karloff and my show. Now, that's a huge subject. Starting from where you started there with the fact that I've written one, it's had an initial production in Oregon just a few months ago, sanctioned by Sarah Karloff. And it went over, what shall we say? It's a good old-fashioned phrase from Boris's era. It went over like gangbusters. And now I am in the process of trying to get the show out to a larger audience. And I'm sure it'll happen. The most encouraging thing from this first production, it was like a showcase production, except that we did produce it with a lot of tech. But the most encouraging thing was the audience response. A writer working on anything, it's a lonely occupation while you're composing, and you have hopes and you have goals of what you're trying to do with something, but it's all theoretical until you have an audience. If you're writing prose or poetry, you got to have some feedback from your readers. In theater, a play really doesn't even exist until it's on the stage. The script is theoretical. Here's the words that we think are going to add up to an evening of theatrical entertainment, but and then of course you work it in rehearsals and try to feel it out, but you don't know for sure what you have until you're up there. And so what I was very glad to find out was that what I was trying to do seemed to be understood and went over with the audience. Step number one is the audience being reached. I was hoping that it was a funny show because I felt like, but this is pretty funny stuff, and that's probably the thing I'm the most happy with, is that the audience laughed all the way through it. It is a very funny show. Mm-hmm. Not to say that it's just all light and it's not fluffy by any means, but when a play has laughs so consistently sprinkled throughout, then when you do take the time to be a little more introspective and dramatic or poignant, those moments stand out all the more in contrast. So what I'm saying is that I was aiming to write an entertainment, and I feel like I've succeeded. And now I'm really looking forward to more people seeing it.
Yeah, you stole the word out of my mouth. It's entertaining, but it's not a comedy.
That's right. Quite some time ago in theater, and it's used in movies to refer to movies and television shows now, is dramedy. When something is because we all know something that is a straight comedy, that's its entire aim, really, is to be funny, and that's fine. In a drama, its primary aim is to illuminate and dramatize whatever the subject matter is. But when the style of a script is a dramedy, it's both at the same time.
It's life.
And that's right. I think that it's such a modern concept that's been popular because it does resonate more often and more easily with people, because we all know that that's what life is, just like, as you said. Life itself it's funny, it's tragic, it's at the same time, and, it's a paradox. And when we see theater pieces or movies that have those kind of elements, it makes sense to us. Like, that's right. Things can be funny 1 minute, the next second something horrible can happen.
You know my circumstances, and people will say, well, how can you still laugh? And I said, because... if I didn't, I'd cry. I mean, you have to find the funny part of everything. Teddy was diagnosed with cancer last year. He's got an ostomy. So I thought, what would be funnier than getting those dog poop bags to throw the garbage in? And then all of a sudden I realized they had them for holidays. So, around Christmas time, he says, you're having a whole lot of fun with this, aren't you? And I said, you have to. You have to laugh at this, because otherwise it would be tragic. Yeah. Nobody could walk away. Nobody could listen to it.
I mean, it's okay to have our times for crying also. Yeah. But,
right.
It does, there are people for whom that is more easy, because we have personality traits, and part of our personality that we're born with, there are people who tend to be more serious and tragic. That's just kind of in their nature. Right. And thank goodness, it sounds like neither one of us are those.
No. I mean, we're almost certifiable.
Yeah. There is a perspective that is, what I'm saying is that some people just have a capacity to see the humor in things more than some others do.
Right.
And so we shouldn't shame everyone into thinking they have to laugh through life. If they don't want to, that's fine.
That's right.
But don't come knocking on our doors. No,
because we're going to laugh at you. Okay, so why Karloff? Why Karloff?
Good. I was going to segue back to the original topic, and a more direct, smooth segue is we're talking about humor and finding or seeing the comedy in situations. That is one of the key characteristics of Boris Karloff's personality.
Yes.
He was very funny and didn't take himself seriously and seemed to have an enormous lot of fun in what he did. So
he had a wicked sense of humor.
That's right. And quirky. And so that's why it wasn't any kind of strain to make a play about him be so funny, because I mean the material that I was drawing from were things from his life, and that included a lot of examples of his sense of humor. So, but why? Here, I'll tell you. Here's the capsule version of how this idea even came about. Was that really not that long ago now? It was in 2013. I was just hit with the idea that I wanted to write a one-man show. Just the basic idea came to me, like, gee whiz, I would like to find someone that I could be interested in enough to write a one-man show about. Here's a side note. A lot of one-man shows nowadays are autobiographical. it's become kind of a public catharsis of whatever is on someone's mind. And so in New York and other cities where there's a lot of theater, you'll see there are a lot of one-man shows which actually are about the person you're seeing.
Right.
Okay, that's kind of a modern thing. That's not what this is about. The more old school approach to concept for a one-man show is for it to be about someone the audience already knows. And that's what I wanted to do, just some historical character. And it really didn't take me too long when I was just thinking of interesting people. I've been a horror movie fan all my life, and so Boris Karloff was just kind of popped up in my head when I was talking over dinner with my wife about this idea, like, Boris Karloff. And she was instantly encouraging. Well, she is about everything I do, thank heavens. And so the first thing I did after just having that notion to write a play about Boris, I contacted Sarah Karloff, his daughter,
Right.
his only child, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
And
And that's birth control, people.
I ran the idea by her because I felt that, well, I knew something about her, and I knew something about the history of what had gone on with Universal Studios for so long, controlling the rights to his image and all that. I felt that I needed her approval. I wanted her on board with the idea. I didn't want to just do it, despite her wishes. I wanted to know if she could sanction that idea. Mm-hmm. And it didn't take very long, just a few emails, and she said, "This is great. It's a great idea. Just as long as it's as long as you write something that's based on truth." And I said, "Well, that's my intention." And so off I went, doing my research and writing the script, staying in touch with her. And by the time I actually did it in all fairly, relatively fast order, a year later, from the time I started, I was able to get this first production on the stage. And that's pretty fast.
It is.
But it was my sole occupation, full-time, every day for all that time. And I had gone through 30 drafts of the script. And it was somebody who, backing up a little bit, as I was developing the script, I knew that I needed to read as much as I could. I ended up reading 5 of the biographies about Boris Karloff, and there was plenty of material there. I could have read even more, but Sarah, when we were early on talking about this, she recommended 2 books in particular for me to use for reference material. Mm-hmm. One is a book that came out in the 60s, but you can still find it. I found a copy online, the way you can find anything, but you can find it on eBay, maybe even Amazon. Right. It's called Dear Boris. The full title is Dear Boris, The Life of William Henry Pratt, also known as Boris Karloff, by Cynthia Lindsay, who was a family friend for decades of the Karloffs, and she was Sarah Karloff's godmother. Mm-hmm. As Sarah likes to say, she said while she was here, Cynthia liked to say she was her godless mother.
Yeah,
it's a lovely book. It's not a scholarly, serious biography. It's more
recollection,
and it's really a sweet, good book. And so I was glad to read that. Before I read that, and at the very, very beginning, I went to there's a well-known horror film historian named Gregory William Menck, and he wrote a book called Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff, The Expanded Story of a Haunting Collaboration.
Right.
That's a long title. And that's a huge book, and he's a clever writer, and it was very entertaining. And that was the first book that I had referred to, and I'd made scads of notes from that. Then I read Dear Boris, and then what Sarah said really she felt should be my primary source is the most recent book, and it really has to be the ultimate definitive biography of Karloff. It's called Boris Karloff, More Than a Monster,
Right.
by Stephen Jacobs. Mm-hmm. And this is just the opposite of the other book of Cynthia's book, in that Stephen's book is very scholarly. It's kind of an old-fashioned, extremely detailed book of the sort that used to be reserved just for, presidents and
scientists, Galileo.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
very, very technical,
Yeah,
very everything.
Yeah, that's right. It's like if forever. I mean, there's no way that anybody would be able to add to what Stephen has done. He's done
Right.
an incredible job. It's the Encyclopedia of Karloff,
Right.
full of details that Sarah wasn't ever aware of before he dug them up, because he researched for 10 years and put it all in this book, and it's just incredible. And so she put me in touch with him. She said, you should really talk with him about your play. And so I contacted him. He was very receptive to the idea of helping me out. And now, to this day, we're in contact virtually every day through Facebook and email. He was never officially given the title dramaturge, or dramaturg, as some people pronounce it, but that's what he was. That's the person who will check on historical accuracy of a.
He backs up the facts with more facts.
Yeah, he was. And so he was extremely helpful. I gave him the script, and he wasn't he wasn't being a stylistic editor. He was being an informational editor. And, for instance, in an early draft, I had Boris using a wheelchair sooner than he actually did in real life.
Right.
And so I said, oh, well, let's change that. I mean, some details really wouldn't matter to anyone except a really hardcore fan, but there was no reason to not be accurate if I could. I mean, within the understanding, though, that of course, being a literary piece and a script to play, I used poetic license in some things, but none of them were things that bothered Sarah or Stephen, really. Anyway,
Right.
But Stephen was a great help. And then, here's a name that I bet you know, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners know, Forey Ackerman.
Right.
The
Monster
editor,
Magazine.
Absolutely. Editor of Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine, who has been credited by many famous people as the guy who got them interested in fantasy, horror, science fiction, literary, and cinematic. He was a big influence on my life and everyone in that era growing up with this magazine, because basically the classic era of horror movies was back in the 1930s. But then here, the mid-60s on,
Right.
Forey he was basically responsible for a revival and interest in all that.
Right.
And so growing up with his magazine, I really took it to heart that he was right, that people like Boris Karloff had done remarkable work that and we needed
Nobody knows about. nobody knows about, because
Nobody knows
I'm
about
the
what?
50s up about some of the incredible work he's done. All they know is a small window of work where I
Oh,
was raised.
You're talking about Boris?
Yeah, about
yeah.
Boris. Yeah. And we need something in this coffee. Anyway, no, people do not understand there was so much more to his work, because I was raised before the monster shows started bringing back the movies, and so I was watching him in other things, because they didn't play Frankenstein. They played him as Dr. Wong, and they played the old ones from before Frankenstein. Those were the movies that you were seeing.
I see. Yes. Yeah. Right. I think I said.
I totally gotcha. So anyway, the monster magazines brought them to a whole new generation.
Correct. And suddenly, absolutely, there's so many things that can be credited that looking back at famous monsters, that was the spark of what even made them happen. You know,
Right.
the Hammer film revival in England, where they revived all those old monsters, but now in Technicolor. And well, George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, they all point to Forey Ackerman and his magazine as big inspirations. And so, well, a vivid memory of mine as a preteen, when the rest of the family, and I was supposed to be in bed at whatever it was, 10 o'clock or something.
Right.
I would sneak back into the living room and turn the television on really low and sit up really close to the screen and watch when I knew some of these monster movies were going to be on.
Right.
And so, and that's kind of a special setting in which to watch spooky old things. And I just thought they were the greatest movies ever made. And I was sitting there watching Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff for the first time.
Yeah.
And Lon Chaney Jr. and all that. And it made a huge impression. So watching those, clutching my little monster magazine, I was a monster kid, and I have been ever since. And so that's why when I had the idea for this play, and then I had Sarah's sanction and authorization, it was like the perfect project for me. But like most people, it's not as if I really knew a huge amount about Boris Karloff's life. I just knew I liked him in his movies.
Right.
And probably like most people who have any idea about Boris, they've probably heard that everyone seems to have said that he was a very kind, gentle person. I knew that. It's like, everyone seemed to love the guy for some reason. But then it was from reading these biographies that the details of all that sort of thing, why people loved him and what he did, it became clear, and I started plucking things from these books to put the cap on what I was talking about Forey Ackerman, is that he wrote a book about Boris Karloff, and so that was another one of the books I referred to for source material. It was called The Frankenstein Monster. Forey was given to also, he was famous for his puns. That book was put out really quickly after Karloff died in 1969, but it's kind of ragged, but it's pretty. It's a great thing to find. I found it on eBay, a paperback, because it has contributions from Ray Bradbury, Robert Bloch, who wrote Psycho, Vincent Price, Lon Chaney, Christopher Lee. And so it's a really good collection of people's thoughts about Boris Karloff.
Well, let me interrupt for a minute. Christopher Lee happened to be Karloff's neighbor for a long time.
That's correct. Yeah, they were good.
They were very good friends, and he had the greatest admiration for him. One of the stories most people don't know is that he was considered by certain ladies in Hollywood as the best swordsman in Hollywood.
Yeah, that's from the Mank book.
Yeah.
There's the historicity of some of that is questionable.
Yeah, but you know what? It does fit because let's talk about the man for a moment. He had a rough childhood. It wasn't his mother died. He was raised by older siblings. And I got to tell you, I've got three kids. And if Christine had to raise the two boys, I'm not sure they would have made it. You know, because they would have pulled a stunt and she would have knocked their blocks off. But so, you know, that is a rough way. He stuttered. He had a terrible lisp. I mean, this kid's life when he was a child was no picnic.
That's right. And he was dark-skinned.
Yes. So that looking for comfort in a woman's arms almost is, Freudian. So I'm not so sure that there's not a little bit of truth in him.
Well, you're talking about like in Hollywood in the 1920s. Yeah. Not a really terribly interesting part of his life to me, but that's probably true.
Yeah, you see, things like that do fascinate me because they dictate the person you become. All that early hardship. And his early work and starving and being alone without family in Hollywood, in the 20s. And go ahead.
Yeah, no, if you're talking about his handicaps that he overcame, that's a very important part of his story, and that's a central part of my play. He had a lot. He was the most unlikely person to become a movie star. He didn't fit the type that was going to have a successful career. He was very fortunate. He was right in saying that he was fortunate to eventually get the role of the monster, because then that really set up the remainder of his career. He had to keep at it, But before that, he was just a struggling actor without really good odds of continuing to have a really good career, because he had so many things to overcome, starting with like you're saying, his the childhood he went through was not a picnic. He got away from England and his very overbearing siblings as soon as he could.
But then that separates you from a support system. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. And he was on his own for quite a few years. He went through, it's one of there's been conflicting reports about how many times he was married, talking about his relationships with women. I think that Stephen finally got it down, and now I'm trying to remember, was it 7?
Yeah, I think it was 7. Yeah.
In older biographies, they would say 4, 5, but it turns out some were extremely brief. And of course, his last one lasted for a long time.
And you know what? Back in the day, biographies took into account if the person was alive or if children of the person were alive. So they didn't come out and say everything.
Right.
Now biographies have it down to he was born at 8:45 in the morning. His mother went into labor at the coffee shop down the street. I mean, there is nothing.
Some of these marriages, it was virtually impossible for writers back then to even uncover it, because they were so obscure. The connections you can't find the certificates proving the marriage and all that. But Stephen, I think, worked that out the most definitively. But when we were listing the things that he was challenged with, and I added that he was dark-skinned. That was something that's not talked about all that much in any of the biographies, and I couldn't find any quote from him in reference to it, but he was Anglo-Indian and very dark, and you can see in some photographs how dark he was. in a lot of the later movies, they were constantly putting light makeup on him to cover that fact up. And a lot of his big films, he doesn't look dark. Well, it's because he's wearing a lot of makeup. That helped him to some degree. His dark skin helped him to some degree in his very early silent movie career, because he found this. He was playing a lot of foreign characters, Arabs, and even he was a native in Africa in a Tarzan picture, and so he was, they kind of gave him a little niche in the industry, but of course that couldn't last forever. Right. But he was definitely. Well, look at the way we are now about race and all that. We have come some distance, but
we haven't come very far when somebody actually worries about who they're selling donuts to. I mean, really. Sometimes I think, God, pick Mars, just hit us with something. Let Mars give them a go. Start making Mars, the new Earth, and just blow us up and make sure nobody from here gets there.
Oh my goodness! Well,
that's
that was
rough.
An interesting tangent.
Yeah, but you're right. You're right. In film, you had white actors playing African American parts, makeup, and everything, and then you had actors with different ethnic backgrounds trying to hide so that they could get work. So we haven't come so far, but we have come far.
That's correct. We have come some distance, and back then, I think that it's safe to assume that Boris just knew that it wouldn't have been wise to talk about what his actual heritage was.
Right.
And so he didn't. And he fudged, he fibbed about what his heritage was. He would often say throughout his life that he had some Russian heritage, and that's where the name Karloff came from.
Yeah.
Which is not at all true.
Yeah, because you had movies with Cary Grant and Laughlin where they're going out and killing the Indians, and what the heck is it? I got the movie in my head, and I can't think of it. It's based on the book.
Gunga Din.
Gunga Din. You got people going to watch Gunga Din, and here you've got some Indian background in you, and you've got all the cowboys out shooting the Indians out in the West, So, it's better to say, me? Oh, I'm Russian.
That's correct. You have that exactly right. So, I mean, we're filling in those blanks, but those are easy blanks to fill in. That's what the atmosphere was like at the time that he was trying to establish himself as an actor, and so that never became a thing, but something that he talked about. But let
me interrupt you, because I want to get back to this one play. Where do you start off?
What do you mean?
In the play, where does it start?
Where does the story start off? Well, the preface to, there's a preface to the answer to that, is that the play is not chronological in the order of its scenes.
Okay. Because you're Karloff talking about his life.
Well, see, he's not just talking about his life; he's reliving it.
Okay.
That's one reason that I like to I most often, not always, but I most often refer to the show as a one-person play rather than a one-man show.
Right.
It's like there's only one actor on stage, but the stage is full of invisible characters, and Boris interacts with them. Mm-hmm. So he's never just. It's not a monologue saying, okay, I did this and then I did this, and a boring lecture about his life. It's not that. It's a theater piece, just that there happens to be one person.
Right.
A bit more of that pantomimic thing of having to talk with invisible people, that's more of that than in some one-man shows. Like we all think of Hal Holbrook and Mark Twain.
Right.
Mark Twain Tonight. I mean, that is a monologue to the audience, but,
Right.
there's a man, one of the most brilliant writers who ever lived, and there's all sorts of great material. He can just sit there on a stool or whatever it is and tell jokes all night. And that is, but we're dealing with Boris. He was very well spoken and very intelligent, but it's not as if there's a body of that kind of work to draw on for a script. And
Right.
so the interest in this play is his life as an actor. I focus on his life as an actor because that's the subject of the show's acting. But the events that in the order that they're presented, it's the character of Boris in the play spontaneously makes a flow of consciousness connection with the next thing he wants to revisit. He'll be reliving one scene, and that makes another association pop up in his mind, and suddenly,
Right.
like, see what I'm saying? Like, so in one, as a matter of fact, in one scene, he's in the makeup room at Universal, and Jack Pierce, the famous makeup artist, he's working with Jack on makeup. The next thing we know, he's suddenly 10 years old back in England,
Right.
making his stage debut as the Demon King, So we see him throughout the evening. We see him at all different ages, from 10 up to, in his 70s, then back in his 30s, his 50s. And you never quite know what time period we're going to be in. And that's part of the
Right.
fun of the fun of the show.
Last night, something similar happened to me because I have a radio show on Thursdays, the Music Box, and I was playing music, and of course it was for Passover and Easter and all that, and it was sparking these memories, and of course they weren't in order. It was the way the music was going, and then they went, oh, I've got another memory for you. That's how it went, and so in the beginning, Andrew is 30, my son, and then at the end he was 5 with the Easter Bunny running down the street, Yeah. Yes. But that's how life is. It sparks memories.
That's exactly right. And flow of consciousness, it's just it's interesting. And as a basic structural concept, it kept the audience. It was one more way of keeping the audience's interest of where are we going to go next. But to be literal about where we start, now actually I even can't be, is the very opening minute is in a kind of a limbo. We hear narration over the speakers. It's Boris's voice. You remember that Boris was the host of the TV show Thriller,
Yeah.
which was a bit like the Alfred Hitchcock hour. And sometimes he was in the episodes, but it's kind of famous. He's well known for being the host of Thriller. And so this opening, the very first thing the audience hears after... Did you hear that ding just now?
No.
Oh, okay, good. I did, because it's on my head, because it's my browser's open, and that means I had an email. Pardon me.
That's okay.
So the opening narration that the audience hears after a flash of lightning and thunder is Boris as if he's opening up an episode of Thriller. But it's also as if he's narrating a children's story, because much later on in his career, he became very well known for recording a series of wonderful children's records.
Yes.
Probably most famously, he did the narration for a great recording of Peter and the Wolf. And so the opening is this fantasy setting where we're hearing Boris sounding like the narrator of children's records, except also like the narrator of Thriller, and he's introducing himself as a young man. And that there's music, and it's impossible to describe in words all that happens. But during that narration, the actor on stage has his back to the audience. He's pounding to get into Hollywood, pounding the doors, trying to break down the doors of getting into Hollywood. So it's symbolic of him trying to get noticed in his career. The very end of this opening sequence, he is becoming the Frankenstein monster. His back is still to the audience. The music reaches its height. He turns to the audience and says, "Boo," which always gets a big laugh. And we're on. So this kind of mysterious, like, whoa, a whole lot of things going on. There's projections, there's sound, there's the narration, there's music. And we can barely see Boris on stage, looking little underneath this huge projection of the Hollywood sign on the Hollywood Hills. And then suddenly there he is. Not as it's Boris, and even though he's not wearing the Frankenstein monster makeup or costume, he's dressed nicely in a tweed suit, the way Boris actually liked to, to wear.
He liked to be dressed like a gentleman.
Oh, well, he was a gentleman, and
yes.
So he dressed like one of that era, just kind of the classic tweed suit, pipe smoking, that guy.
Cricket watching.
Cricket playing, too.
Yeah.
Cricket coaching. He was, if you have any kind of a stereotypical image of an old-fashioned English gentleman, that's Boris, really. So there he is, looking like that, except that he's moving as if he has the metal braces up his legs, up his pants, like he had to wear for Frankenstein.
Right.
And so after that opening prelude, the first thing that we visit is him working with Jack Pierce on the Frankenstein monster makeup. So boom, we're into the Frankenstein era.
Right.
But then
and that's where it took off. And before we go any further, tell them about your site, where the site is for it.
Yeah, there's several places to go, except here's the easiest place to go, and there are video clips, there's a lot of text, there's a lot of photographs. It's very simple. Karloff the Play, one word. K-A, excuse me, my gosh. KARLOFFTHEPLAY, karlofftheplay.com. That's the play's website. And there's a contact tab there, so you could send me messages.
All stalkers go to his site.
All what?
I just thought I'd say that.
What did you say?
All stalkers can go to your site.
I don't want to get into that. Oh, my God.
I am willing to share.
From that site, they can get to other sites because there's a good link page there. It goes to other listings because the play is starting to get all over the internet. For instance, I have the script registered with something really cool, a new thing that started in January that a group had been working on for some years. It's called the New Play Exchange, with the theory being that theaters and producers can look through this online catalog for potential productions. And so on the links page at the Karloff the Play site, people can go to the New Play Exchange, where there's a script sample they can download, and the video links and more information. And I'm on Facebook. There's a business page, fan page on Facebook. That's also Karloff the Play at Facebook.
Okay.
And
you're going to be doing this when? When's your next showing so far?
Yeah, let me tell you that this was a surprise. Well, the direct answer, I'll tell you, we are doing the show again for Halloween, which is great.
Yes.
In Cape Ann, Massachusetts.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a place called the Cape Ann Cinema and Stage. Links to that are posted there on Facebook and at the website. It's a really popular kind of artsy movie theater, but they have several rooms, and only in December they added a new performance space for live things. And so they're having and they've had one or two events so far there. They've been doing movies for years,
Right.
but they're having their first full season of live shows this year, and Karloff is slated for that. And that
Congratulations.
Thank you. That was just a complete surprise because, as you know, of course, I want the show to get out there, as they say, but I wasn't trying to promote productions with me in it. I'm looking forward.
You hold the license, so in other words, maybe somebody else can do it too.
Well, no, that's not quite what I mean.
Okay.
What I mean is that I wrote a play, and it's not as if there's two different things. There's the play, and then there's me, who I happen to have played Boris in this first production, but the two aren't connected at the hip.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to other actors playing Boris, and other producers, theaters doing productions. And so I wasn't at all trying to drum up business for the show with me still attached to it. So this came as a surprise. Rob Newton, who owns this and runs this theater, the Cape Ann Cinema and Stage, in Gloucester, Massachusetts. Except that, you know, when I'm there, I need to soften my R more. It's Gloucester. Mm-hmm.
We're from Ireland, so I just massacre English. I just kind of slide through it.
Well, you know, can you picture the way that city's name is spelled? It looks, you know, if you don't know anything at all, it looks like Gloucester. And of course, it's not that. But it's also not Gloucester. My tendency is to say Glau, but I watched some clips from people who lived there, and it's definitely Gla. Mm-hmm. And then they have the soft R. Anyway, that's where it is. Rob, who runs the theater, he became aware of the show through Facebook. And he'd been following. So I started that page last June as a way of promoting my Kickstarter campaign, which funded this first production, and then for promoting the show itself. And so he'd been following. He found all the information, and we talked. He wanted to. Well, he said he was interested in the idea, but, you know, he has to see what the show is like. And so I gave him access to something which is not publicly available, and that's the videotape. See how old I am? I say videotape.
Yes. And I understood it.
I think everyone does, I hope. I gave him access to the video of the show so he could see exactly what it's like. And that sold him. He went, I want that. I want that show, you doing it there at my theater. And so there we are. That's October 23rd, 24th, and 25th in Gloucester.
Gloucester.
I'm really looking forward to that. I've never been to Massachusetts. My gosh.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, steeped in history. I hope I have time to
stay out of Salem, you know, and all that. Yeah.
Well, I hope I have time for, you know.
Yeah, it's a beautiful state. It is a beautiful state. The people are wonderful, and you're right. History is incredible there. I think most people are totally unaware of the history of their own states, in fact. But that's me. Yeah. That's me. So, Sarah, she's such a sweetie, and she just raves. She loves this, so she must think you're pretty much point on.
She's a big fan of the show. I mean, I'm so grateful. She, I said earlier that she was, kept track of the progress on the show as I was writing it. And then when it came time to do it, it was still a surprise to me when she said, "I'm coming up to see it." I didn't expect that until, I don't know,
Right.
just a month before we did it. And we did it just this past November. And so she flew up and saw both shows opening weekend. And, so there, this reminds me of this moment. I just had this flash of reliving this moment. Opening night, you can imagine, that's a big hairy day,
Oh, yeah.
And I had so much on my plate that I had to do, and then of course it took me 3 hours to do the makeup, and so there wasn't any way that I could be sitting around schmoozing with Sarah before the show.
Right.
Unfortunately, and so I had my assistant take care of her, and so I didn't meet Sarah until during the curtain call that night. And it was caught on video, and I had a photographer who was covering the show nicely, and so it's caught in images. It was such a great moment of taking my bow, and there's Sarah Karloff in the front row. I'd given her the best seat, of course, and this comfortable seat in the front. I just came down, and she just came right over to me and gave me a huge hug and thanked me. And it was, the audience is going crazy. And I was saying, "Gosh, I'm sorry I couldn't have met you earlier." And she said, "Oh, don't worry about it." And we got instantly in rapport. We took a few minutes break, then we sat down and had a question and answer with the audience. Sarah and I were like a comedy team, cracking each other up.
Oh, she's funny.
Oh,
she's very funny. She finds a lot of his certain behaviors funny, but she always say he was very private. He was
right.
He was a very private man, and that is indicative of a time when, I don't care if there was a Donnybrook going on in your house. If somebody knocked on the door, everybody straightened themselves out and answered the person at the door. And when they were gone, it was everybody's back at each other. And that'll tell everybody about my home life. But really, he was a very private person. He didn't like to talk about his personal life.
No, and I had to work that line directly. I'm a very private person, into the script. Because that's the biggest paradox when you think about it. Here's this private man who really didn't, just as you're saying, he did not like to talk about himself. He was very private. He, his cards were close to his breast. And but here he is in this play talking nonstop for 2 hours. How do you justify that? Well, it's because it's a play.
Right. Yeah.
The whole concept is, here's this fantasy opportunity of the spirit of Boris, just kind of on this, I don't know, he's on some kind of floating platform somewhere in the universe, and he's just wants to chat with us and wants to relive things with us, unlike he ever would have in real life.
Yeah, in real life he would have said, absolutely not.
Right.
No. You are not doing this play.
Right.
That's where he would have been. So you're so lucky he's dead.
Well, but Sarah thought that he would like it.
Yes,
which is something. But anyway, she already had read the script, of course, before she saw it, and she had liked it a lot. But it's two different things. Reading a script, it's kind of difficult for anybody, even an experienced reader of scripts. It's difficult to really know what it's going to be like on stage, because for one thing, there are unpredictable elements, like what is this actor going to be like? What is the tech like? What's it going to be like? And so once she saw the show, then she was really overwhelmed by it. Yeah,
when you read, because I'm learning more and more that people like you and I can joke around and we can use analogies and we're on board with each other. I'm finding people are more and more and more very literal. And
interesting.
Yes, and so when I was reading about the play, and it says over in the side is this a mountain of hats and props which resemble Frankenstein's a lab.
Oh, you're looking at the website.
But it's actually Karloff's life in that big
That's right.
mound of things and props and all of that. But I find when you try to use analogies, they go, what? What is it? What is it supposed to represent? So I thought that was very cool.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. It's a very extremely unrealistic theatrical setting. I could go on about that, but it would be too much of a tangent. Let's just say that I have favored the more theatrical elements in stage productions and movies all my life. When something, here's something for you that people are rooted. What you're saying, I think what you're saying, part of what you're saying is that people are much more rooted in total realism. They like things are literal. Like they go to see a movie, they want a plot that they can follow, and it has these.
And they don't have to think it over too much.
No. Don't think too much, and have it. No, the modern audiences are probably the most passive audiences in history. We sit back and we want something to just wash over us, massage us, and that's entertainment. And it is, except that I think I prefer Brecht's idea that what you want is for the audience to actually be engaged in thinking.
Yes, and show their appreciation. I had this conversation with Chip Defoe the other night, and he's a New York playwright, and I said we've become a non-reactionary audience, where back in the day we clapped or we booed, or that character sucks. Now audiences are very reacting. They just kind of sit there. And a perfect example of this, which is analogy, guys, so try to follow. It is. I went to see Mary Poppins, and there's a scene where Bert walks up the side of the stage and then walks upside down and tap dances on the top of the stage roof. And I mean, this is not easy. He's harnessed to a board, and he's like looking at people like, "Hey, how about a clap?" Because people are just sitting there watching. They didn't, And of course, then some people started clapping, and everybody realized you're supposed to be. Wow, you're walking upside down, guy. This is amazing. This is the coolest thing, Yeah. We've kind of become those people.
Yeah, it's an emotional detachment that concerns me.
And because in movie houses, you want the brats behind you to keep quiet.
Well, yes.
And you don't want to have to comb popcorn out of your hair. Back in the day of vaudeville, if they didn't like somebody, they threw a tomato at them.
Yes, and in the 19th century, there was some big riots at theaters. And people would be so caught up in a production, if something was really controversial, the audience would go wild. Rip up the seats, start throwing them. I mean, they were so passionate about. It wasn't just entertainment in that sense. It was a very important part of their lives, and they really reacted to it.
Right.
And you are essentially. I basically agree with you that audiences are more difficult to get a reaction out of nowadays, and they don't really even
understand it.
Well, they don't really. They don't even see actually what's in front of them often.
Right.
I mean, I really don't. I have trouble seeing movies with the public anymore. anymore because
Yeah.
I don't understand the reactions. I don't understand what they're doing. There's a whole lot of reasons for it. A basic one going back for some time, like starting with VCRs, or maybe just with television, maybe, is that this ability to get up in the middle of a movie constantly, go to the bathroom, go to the refrigerator, and now we pause. If we don't want to miss something, we pause it and we break it up. Totally contrary to the intentions of the people who made the film. A film is, it's like a film is supposed to be watched in a sitting. That's what it is. It's like, if you're being shown a painting, what do you only look at the very top part, then you go
to the bathroom and then look at a chest.
Now look at the middle part, and and deny yourself the opportunity of having some kind of a reaction.
Right.
Emotional, mental reaction to what's in front of you. But that's why I do like theater, because there I was doing my play with a very reactive audience. I heard them. They laughed a lot.
Right.
They laughed. They cried. They jumped up in unison for standing ovations. They were very reactive, and so I'm grateful for that. It is possible, and that kind of thing happens more often now in live theater than it does in movie theaters. Yeah. You were referring to the Broadway production, the stage production version of Mary Poppins, right?
Right.
I think that I think this is an issue with those very expensive, gigantically produced things that people are more passive about because it's such,
special effects, even on stage.
Well,
here's an example.
I don't think those kind of shows have the opportunity to reach an audience's heart as much as simpler shows.
Once he did that, people started clapping and all.
There you go. Well, that gets back.
It just took that 1 minute for him to go, really? I'm upside down on the ceiling, guys, and I'm tap dancing, and he takes his hat off, because I guess they learned early on that audiences have been programmed through movies not to make noise, and so they go to the theater and they think, well, don't clap, don't say anything, Of course, if you watch Jerry Seinfeld, they're always talking in the movie theater. Yeah. And those are kind of people that wouldn't last long with me. But there's a scene where out of nowhere this giant umbrella shows up, and you're standing there wondering, where the heck did it come from? That's how much is going on and capturing your attention. But it's difficult. I constantly, and shame on me for doing this. I quote Orson Welles. Before he died, he said, "We're brutalizing the audience. We're doing so much that they don't have time to think."
That's a good quote, and it's that's a very big can of worms of what all is going on there. The way, for instance, the editing of movies progressively has gotten faster and faster. Scenes are shorter and shorter and shorter. You watch an old movie from the 30s, and it's remarkable the difference in the pacing then. I mean, the scenes actually, they had a beginning, and they were a little more theater bound in that sense. Is that they didn't know yet that an audience was still going to follow what's going on, even if you cut into the middle of the scene. And of course, nowadays we just get like the sound bite.
Right.
You watch an action film and there's like just a handful of dialogue in the whole thing, and it's just. That's part of the way we bludgeon an audience into submission. But I think that people are constantly dissatisfied. They're watching these things. They think that that's what they want to see. Would you be able to hold for a second? My phone keeps ringing and it's driving me crazy.
I don't know.
Well,
Just do what you got to do, and I'll cut it out.
Well, just make a note of where you are. Hold on. Oh.
Okay. All right. There we go. Ta-da!
You sure it's recording again?
It looks like start talking.
Hello.
You got it.
Okay. Yeah. It's okay. You need to learn a little bit about Audacity. It's very easy to just cut out.
I did learn a little about Audacity.
But it's very easy. It's very easy to snip. So you could.
Yes, I do know. Yes, I know a little bit more than I'm saying, but
you could make this meandering conversation much more scintillating by like cutting to the quick, like in a movie, making it fast. I'm kidding.
No,
You could clean it up a bit, and you could cut out gaps. Anyway, sorry about that. I'm glad I picked up the phone.
Okay, so we were talking about nonsense. Let's get back to the meat of this. How did you get into acting?
Well, directly relating to this play I've written, one of my inspirations was Boris Karloff.
Uh-huh.
When I saw those movies, and I wanted to be able to do what he and the other guys were doing, like with acting. Then my older sister encouraged me in 7th grade to audition for my first play. It was in a local group that did theater for children. And I tried out, and I got the lead. And I thought, well, this is easy.
Yeah.
All you got to do is try out, and you get the best part, and off you go. And so I was encouraged from the get-go. And oh my gosh, I mean, it's the cliche theater bug biting someone. That's what happened with me. I just went, this is the greatest. Now I know. I felt like a lot of people, probably everyone, who then continues to act after they discover it. It's just like you discover something that you have a talent for.
The fire in the belly.
It's very fire in the belly is what Boris called it. It's like you either, some people of course never like it. I mean, they might try it and they have stage fright and don't enjoy the process. But I immediately enjoyed the process, and I felt like I think I've just discovered something that I can do.
See, I can't I can remember lyrics if I'm singing.
Uh-huh.
I cannot remember lines. I can't tell you how many times I've read Shakespeare. I've read great books, and I know the story. I know basically the line, but ask me to recite it, and I'll look at you and go, yeah.
Well, but you would have to sit down and make a conscious effort to memorize the lines.
I suppose that maybe that's it.
Oh,
I have no desire to be an actress or an actor, so I guess it's like let somebody else learn the hard stuff.
Yeah, so learning lines is not necessarily the most fun part. None of it's very glamorous, but oh my gosh, there's nothing. It's really exciting during the rehearsal process, which is the discovery process, if you allow yourself to just slowly figure out what is really going on behind the words. It's a psychological puzzle that starts unraveling as you rehearse, getting inside the thinking of the character. Doing that as opposed to pretending that you're ready to open at your first rehearsal. Unfortunately, a lot of, I should say, I have worked with a number of people. It seems fairly common for some people to feel that the whole point is to be, quote, good, unquote, from the first rehearsal, or they're not doing it well. That they're supposed to know what they're doing without ever doing any of the exploratory work on the character.
Right.
And that results in very conventional acting, which it might get by okay, but it's not very exciting, and
it's not a long-term fix. And I'm not going to say any names, but there's a book out, and it was an older actor stating that he was acting with a very popular younger actor, and his exasperation at he would remember the idea of the lines, but then change it when they were filming all the time, which, because he couldn't remember the exact, the discipline wasn't there to say the exact lines that were written. Do you know what I mean?
I do. It's a slightly different issue because, see, in film acting, the important thing is spontaneity. Actors really dread doing retakes because they might start losing the edge of spontaneity, and it's going to start looking canned, which is really dreadful nowadays because everyone expects everything to be so naturalistic and realistic, forgetting, that's a whole other topic. I almost went off into another tangent. Forget that.
Because theater people have the same problem. How do we keep it fresh? How do we keep it,
Correct.
Because you're using the same line every night, sometimes twice a day.
Yeah.
How do you keep that line fresh for the new audience?
In a nutshell, that is the main difference between acting on stage and acting in front of a camera is that on stage, what you need to accomplish is a repeatable performance.
Right.
On film, they don't need to have a repeatable performance. Get me while I'm crying. Okay, I'm really upset about what's going on in the scene, but you better catch it now because I'm not going to sit here and do this again.
Cry all day.
And they don't have to do it again. You see, and I, for a long time, screenwriters are they don't have quite the same amount of respect that they did in earlier eras because if an actor paraphrases, it's really tolerated. Like, well, that's fine. You made it your own. You made it work for yourself. But on stage, yes, we want to be accurate with the lines, and we need to have a repeatable performance. And if we're in a long run, we have to go back into rehearsal and do anything that can spur our imagination again. As a director, I've directed a lot. A good tool for that is at rehearsal, a pickup rehearsal as we call it, for the actors to reverse roles. Here, pick up a script. Here, you be him and you be her now. And just see what spontaneously happens. The actors are going to hear the lines that they usually are saying coming from somebody else, and there's going to be some revelations like, oh my God, look what she did with that line or whatever. And the piece you're working with has a freshness because you're seeing it through fresh eyes. And then
you're seeing it the way somebody else has interpreted it. Yeah.
For one thing, yeah, and you make this whatever you can do to make the thing fresh, because the last thing in the world you want to do is just a mechanical repetition of what you've done every night. You cannot do that. That's not going to engage an audience. An audience wants to see something that seems like it's happening for the first time. So, that's one of the big challenges of doing a play. That's for sure.
So we were talking about your hopes for the play. So you're hoping that other actors will be able to do this,
right? A lot of one-man shows are written by the people who do them, but actually quite a few have also been written by playwrights other than the performer, like James Whitmore was famous for playing President Truman in Give 'Em Hell, Harry.
Right.
And also he played Will Rogers in Will Rogers USA, and those were both. He did that one for 30 years. He just kept doing it. That's the thing about one man shows.
Hal Holbrook is famous for
Hal Holbrook. Yeah. He's done that forever. I mean,
forever.
Since I was a kid.
Yeah, he's done it. And
one thing that he does to keep it's like he has this catalog. If he did all of his Mark Twain material, it would be like 6 hours or something.
Right.
That he lets himself kind of improvise and kind of, depending on the audience reaction or whatever occurs to him, he pulls from different parts of the material that he has at hand. That's kind of a special case. Very different from what most one-man shows are like. But anyway, my point is that that one-man shows are not always performed by the people who write them. Right. I wrote this to write a play, not as something to keep me busy as an actor, not as a vehicle for myself. And in this original, this first production that we've done now, I was rehearsing with another actor for 3 months, as a matter of fact. We'd worked, a long time. And something came up, and for personal reasons, he had to leave the show.
Right.
And everything was scheduled. I could, at that point, it was impossible. Sarah was coming. The theater was booked.
Right.
Things were starting.
The show must go on.
It was at a point of no return.
Right.
And so I stepped in. I knew the material as a playwright, and I had rehearsed it, but then I had, a whole new thing to do of memorizing my own script. And it's not as if that was easy, because that's a very different task. But I just knuckled down, and because it's not as if the idea of playing Boris was, unappealing. Of course, it was very appealing. Right. I didn't cast myself to begin with because now, see, you could cut that out with your Audacity. Cut out the comments. It's really easy. You just go snip. Because I'm not ideal casting.
Right.
I'm a tenor. Boris is famous for his rich baritone voice, baritone bass, actually.
Which a lot of it was from smoking.
Yes, I know. Definitely. There's that edge to his voice, which is definitely from smoking. But he also had he was a baritone.
Yes.
And physically, when you cast a show, obviously you always try to get as close to some kind of ideal as possible. And I know that there are people out there who would be more ideal on their casting. I want to see those guys. The best thing I can picture for the show is if a fairly well-known actor could get interested in doing it. Because, a lot of people, like we said James Whitmore earlier, he was a star in his time. But a lot of well-known actors have had one-man shows that they trot out once in a while. Like James Earl Jones did a great one about Paul Robeson, the great singer. Right. Leonard Nimoy of Star Trek fame, he did a great one-man show that he did for a period of several years about the life of Vincent van Gogh.
Right.
So it would be wonderful if, I don't want to jinx the possibilities by bringing up any specific names, but if there's an actor...
Well, when we're done, I've got a name to bring up to you,
okay.
So you should contact him, because I've been trying to get him to do Karloff for the last 10 years.
Okay, well, I have no doubt that we're talking and thinking about the same person, and he has been contacted.
Oh, okay.
Aren't we being mysterious?
Yes.
We don't we don't want to jinx it, though.
We don't want to jinx it.
We don't want to talk about it ahead of time. But
no.
That's it's a very slim possibility that somebody that he would be able to do it. But anyway, ideally he could do it, and there are other actors that would be great. That would be great. But even if it's not a known actor, there are so many one-man shows. If you look around online, you'll find evidence of some which are successful, but the public never really hears about.
Right.
They're all over the country. People doing, like there must be 10 Benjamin Franklins at any given moment, guys doing his life because it's such good material. And so it doesn't have to be a household name actor, but that would be kind
Yeah,
of cool.
we're running out of time, believe it or not, because
great.
I'm going to have commercials and I'm going to do a couple of clips during this. Again,
cut it to the most interesting parts. That's right.
Yeah, we need to know again where people can find this information.
If they go to the play's website, that is the portal to everything else. They'll find video and all that. Karloff the Play. Just one continuous thing, karlofftheplay.com. And they will find information such as information about the upcoming show this Halloween in Gloucester. I'm practicing that. Gloucester.
Forget it, because you know what? I practice and I destroy names. I know
Anyway,
Chip, and I sat there and went brain dead, and instead of Defy, I went da.
I would be more safe to say Cape Ann. It's also in Cape Ann, Massachusetts.
There you go.
Yeah, at the Cape Ann Cinema and Stage, a very popular little artsy spot that where Karloff has been booked. I'm very happy to say that's October 23rd through the 25th, the week before Halloween, and then it's going to keep on going. The play beyond that. If people go to that website, I will be posting, as I have been doing for some time now. As news develops about the show, I post it there. Also on Facebook, Karloff the Play at Facebook.
Yeah. I think it's wonderful. I think he's one of the most underrated actors right now. I don't think people know how incredibly talented the man was.
I think that's basically true. Everyone knows his face as the Frankenstein monster, but that's why in the play I really focused on his acting career, the arc of it, because something really wonderful about his life is that later on in life he got to do some very good plays, and he loved the stage most above making movies, and he got to do some good plays, and he got some really good
Arsenic and Old Lace was written for him.
Sort of.
Yeah.
And that was his first come back to the stage, and then it went on from there, ending with the Lark about Joan of Arc that
with
he did.
Julie Harris.
Yes, and he got incredible reviews for that, and other shows too. Peter Pan, in which he was Captain Hook, and what I'm saying is that this guy who, the public knew him as the monster guy. Well, he did get to show in a big way that he was capable of much more than just that. That he was versatile, and he was an old school actor, but a really good, sincere actor. And the reason that audiences, when they rediscover his films, they still connect with him as an actor, because he said he had the fire in the belly. Well, it really shows. Mm-hmm. He loved his art of acting, and he just exudes that. There's something about his personality which is rare, and that's what makes movie stars. People who there's an indefinable something about them, and he has that spark. That's more that it's like a flame, and that's why he's actually one of the most beloved movie stars of all time.
Yeah, he definitely had. He worked in spite of terrible crippling pain from back.
That's right.
He helped start the Screen Actors Guild.
That's correct.
Because of what he went through making all these early films.
That's exactly right.
And
That's right.
that back then they had to meet in places, and they had to hide their cars. They had to use payphones so nobody could hear them.
As they were developing the idea for the guild, yes.
People do not know how much he contributed to the industry as it stands today. He and James Gleason and Fairbanks Jr. and on and on and on. All these people, incredible man. But he was as much as he was involved in all of this, very few people know much about him.
Correct. And everything you've just mentioned, those milestones in his life, those are all major milestones in my script.
Cool.
Screen Actors Guild, very important. His later theater work,
Cool.
all of that. Yeah, the theme of the play is self-realization, and then the subject is acting, and then here's something else about because I recently had to write a pithy little paragraph to pitch, and I've done it several times, to pitch the idea of the show. In this one, I pointed out that it's basically the story of the underdog succeeding, and everyone loves that kind of story,
Right.
And that's Boris, a very unlikely movie star who became huge.
James Earl Jones, a stutterer. And
Yes.
his voice is everywhere.
Yes, it is. Yeah, talk about a voice. Oh my God.
I had something happen to me, and I ended up stuttering for a good while.
Really?
And it's not easy to overcome, And one day my husband said, "Slow down. I'm listening to you. Just take your time and talk." And that's what I do,
Yes, that's what Boris, he had a really bad case of stuttering, come back after I don't know, he's in his 40s as an adult, not a young adult. He had a huge bout of it come back because he was putting so much pressure on himself.
Right.
Rehearsing at the very beginning for Arsenic and Old Lace. He didn't feel capable. He was scared to death. He hadn't been on the stage for decades. And so he put so much pressure on himself that the result was stuttering to the degree that he thought he was going to have to quit the show. But, it worked out.
And he owes it all to that jolly old monster.
That's correct.
Yes, I'm sure.
That's one of those famous lines from him.
Yes. I'm going to tell you, anybody who has never seen a young picture of him, he was a good-looking man.
Yeah.
He was a very handsome, good-looking man. And I said that to Sarah. She says, he was a good-looking man when he was older. I says, yeah, well, I don't want to sound like, a tramp here. Of course he was,
He was. But he changed. Yes, that's a whole other story. His very earliest pictures, when he is so good looking, he went through quite a period of starving to death.
Right.
Well, not quite literally, but really underfed in his early days in Hollywood. And you'll see some pictures where it's really showing how gaunt he became, how thin and fragile almost. He went through a period where it really changed his face quickly because of his hardships.
Right.
He was kind of in that shape when he got the role of the monster. He had an unusual face to begin with, handsome. He was always interesting looking, and unusual looking at the point when he was cast as the monster. And
when he was young, he had that beautiful face that every bad boy has.
Huge eyes.
Every bad boy has. He could just smile at you and you go, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And then, of course, when he did Frankenstein, he had some teeth extracted to help mold his face a little bit more to make it.
He didn't have them extracted for the movie. He already had a dental bridge.
Okay.
And it was his idea. That was one of his contributions to the makeup design, was to take that bridge out because his right cheek caved in. And that was, if you picture the monster in your head right now, that's an important part of the look, is that cheek caving in.
Yeah.
That was his idea.
Oh, that's cool. We're almost completely, because I want to keep
bye.
30 minutes. Bye. No. Don't do that to me. Don't hang up. Because I want to talk to you after this. Okay. Thank you so much for being a guest on our show. His name is Randy Bowser, and he has a show, Karloff, and it's going to be up in Massachusetts in somebody and somebody's. We said it already.
Well, and
See?
hopefully, eventually, all over the country. Because
hopefully, yes. So everybody.
I know that audiences love this. I want more audiences to have the chance to see it.
Yes. From what I've seen just of clips on the site, it looks extremely interesting and engaging. And it's about a topic that I think everybody will fall in love with again. And so thank you so much for being our guest. And don't hang up because I'm just going to stop recording.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Mo. I'm really, obviously I like talking about Karloff and what I've been working on. And so I appreciate...
And show business, yes.
And show business, yeah. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, let me stop the track.
Somewhere over the rainbow, birds fly. Birds fly over the rainbow, why oh can't
Thank you for visiting me at my lair. And God bless you and yours.
Ha 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 ha.